So this is a game that did not make the database because it was not played on a DGT board, because this was round 6 of the US Open, August 1st. So this was exactly almost 2 weeks ago. And this is the 6th round. So this is the second game of the second day. There were 4 games the first day and 3 games the second day. And so this was the final game that was played in the game in 60 time control, which is, of course, still USCF Classical. So my opponent here is a FIDE master from Cuba. His FIDE rating is, 2150, 2200. Used to be very strong in the 90s. He's, I think, in his early 50s, but still a very dangerous player who ended up playing very well this tournament. His only loss was to me. So serious, experienced player. And we're off to the races, so I'm playing with the white pieces. And I have this open in ChessBase as well, so I'll be looking at both screens, and I'll have the chat open on my phone if you have any questions. Let's dive in. So this is a short game. Short game, but a lot happens. So we start. It's a Rosalimo. Of course, no time for preparation. I wasn't even able to check his games. No increment, game in 25, 5-second delay. Oh, sorry, wrong board. So let's start again. Sorry, now you should see the moves. Apologies. So Rosalimo, he plays e6, and I'm saying that along with g6 and knight f6, these are the 3 topical responses nowadays. My opponent plays e6, short castles, knight e7, and here I go with Wesley So's recommendation in his 1e4 chessable course a couple years back. This is where I learned the move. In terms of popularity, the most popular move here is rook e1 by a large margin, followed by c3, and only in third place, both online and over the board, the move d4, which takes the game into a very open Sicilian flavored territory, where you could argue that the bishop is awkwardly placed on b5, but then so is the knight on e7. So it's sort of a trade-off of factors, where typically in these e6 Sicilians, the knight wants to go to f6. So it's a very interesting line. I think it's underrated. I think black has a hard time equalizing here. And yeah, Nepo has played it a lot. I mean, it's a well-known line. And yeah, I'm just looking at, this was first played in 1971 by Witty Alien. No, just kidding. Witty Alien played it in 1981. Okay, so my opponent plays knight takes d4, which is already a serious inaccuracy. This is a pretty natural move because there's a natural instinct to put the other knight on c6, but black is worse after this move. I think the best chance for equality is queen b6, the main line, which I will not get into right now. This is beyond the scope of this presentation. The upshot is that he takes and goes a6. Still a lot of games in the database. This is still pretty well known. And after bishop drops back to e2, knight to c6, here I actually committed a small inaccuracy myself. The correct move is queen to c3, which is a weird move to play. But the point is that you're preventing black from developing the bishop. And black has a very, very hard time solving this problem. If black plays queen to f6 here, this endgame is just much worse for black because of the structure and weak dark squares. White plays c3 here. This is really good for white. And it's like a 0.6 advantage. Again, not the interesting part. I played queen to e3. My logic was that I wanted to get the queen to g3 potentially, and I wanted to leave the c3 square for the knight. But it's not the best way to maximize the advantage. My opponent plays queen to c7. Reasonable move. White is still slightly better. Still some games in the database. Here I played knight to c3, which is another pretty sloppy move, honestly. The point is, you want to go c4 in these types of positions. I don't know why I didn't play c4. c4 is a more annoying move because it prevents b5, and it gets this center bind. But I was just sort of autopiloting the development, and black should have played b5 here, and after b5, black is doing completely fine. Instead, he went for the slightly more passive bishop e7. Now I played king h1. The idea of this move was that I wanted to play f4, but the immediate f4, I was worried about some bishop c5 ideas, even like knight to d4, I remember being concerned about. And there's a weird line, bishop d3, knight c2, and black wins on the spot. So I was like, let's not mess around with this. Let's play king h1, short castles, and f4. Very standard Sicilian position. D6, again, Everything should be very natural here. A4, taking the chance to prevent b5. But my opponent immediately exploits the drawback of this move, which is that it weakens the b4 square. So c2 is attacked. I played bishop d3. And if black had played the right move here, white is already like borderline worse. But in my opinion, the correct move for black is very hard to... It's hard to understand why this is good. Like, I'm curious, what would be people's instinct here for black? Like, if you especially are not a Sicilian player, what would you be inclined to play? Yeah, bishop f6 he played, which is a very natural move, just like feels good to put the bishop on the long diagonal. But this actually is the precursor to disaster. This is the reason why, along with the next move, he loses the game. So in only 3 moves, black is already lost by force. Look at this position. In 3 moves, and he doesn't hang a queen or anything, black is losing by force. The correct move was d5, which to me is a weird move because it allows e takes d5, opening the bishop, and like, isn't this pawn going to be weak? The point is, like, white really suffers because this pawn is on f4. And the pawn weakens a lot of squares. The whole territory on the king side is weak. Now bishop f6 is coming next, and black has very, very active pieces. Plus, the bishop on d3 is under the watchful eye of the knight, so its power is greatly limited because black can take it whenever he needs to. So, slight edge for black here. Pretty sloppy opening play by me. But he plays bishop f6 very quickly. Okay, I mean, he's threatening to take, so I played bishop to d2. And here he plays the move b6. Now, the moment he played this move, I felt a glimmer of hope. Like, the moment he played it, I felt this rush in my chest, but I couldn't explain it at first, of course. I just had a feeling immediately that something smelled about this move. Something smelled about this move. Why did I have this intuition? Well, I think 2 reasons. First of all, when he played bishop f6, what move is your like bullet brain going to immediately supply? Like, what's a fairly standard tactical trope in such positions? Like, you should be pretty on board with this. Yeah, e5. E5 is something to keep in your pocket because, like, de5, maybe there's like bishop h7 or some crap like that. Of course, here, this is not impressive. Like, you can technically win the knight back, but like, okay, you've given up the bishop pair. What are you gaining from this? But obviously, like, such ideas should be noticed. And when you played b6, I'm like, well, now the rook is going to be hanging. And as a matter of fact, the rook being hanging has nothing to do with the combination. Well, until the very end, it doesn't have much to do with the combination. It actually does, but much later than I thought. And he wants to fianchetto the bishop, obviously. And I realized that if I allow him to fianchetto the bishop and complete his development, like, black is going to have enduring pressure, and I don't have much going on the king side. So this is my chance. It's now or never. So I start calculating e5. Now, because we started with 25 minutes, I'm like down to 9 minutes here. I got to hustle. I'm like, am I going to like lose this game? It's going to be my second loss. And so I started looking at e5. And I looked at this move for 1 minute or so before I decided to just play it because I felt like the risk was not very high. I calculated first the next 2 moves. So e5, d takes e5, he plays instantly. And here you have to avoid a couple of tempting but very mistaken options and play the correct move. What is the correct move? Black is already almost lost here, believe it or not, in human terms. So not queen e4. Queen e4 loses. Bishop e4 is not impressive. Queen e4 is not good because of knight takes bishop. And you should be familiar with the pattern that when the queen lands on a8 like this, it oftentimes gets trapped. There's a million lines that involve this trap. Where, okay, here rook a8 is possible, but even bishop takes g2 is stronger. And if you take back, well, the attack just stagnates without the bishop. Now, what about this move? Well, same problem. Same problem. We just talked about this in the previous position. You still can't take the rook. Taking the knight just is unimpressive. So the idea here is that you have to basically borrow a positional idea in a tactical position, which can be hard for people. The move e5, right, is a tactical idea in this particular instance, but oftentimes the square clearing idea is more positional in nature, and so easier to find. And I've shown this game a gazillion times. It's sort of like a stock example for this idea. White to play. What did Rausen play in this position? He actually set this up by taking on f6 in the previous move, which is counterintuitive. But it's a setup move for this idea, e5. And after d takes e5, but this is the thing, he doesn't play f5, because that allows black to clear the debris in the center with e4, reactivate the bishop. What is the important follow-up here? Using a little tactics to help out. So you should notice this relationship and the fact that the rooks are disconnected, and that helps you find knight e4. Black can't take because of knight f6, queen is overloaded, and now you can play f5 and black is buried alive. So that's basically the whole point. So now it should be easier to see that knight e4 is actually quite a natural move here. It's the same idea. Now what's cool about this move is it attacks the knight and it threatens knight takes f6. And in this position, black's last chance to reach a semi-tenable position was to play knight takes d3, which is a psycho move, allowing knight f6, exposing the king. Why would anybody ever do that? He was, of course, not suspecting anything and played bishop e7. And after about 2 minutes, I spotted the entire sequence and felt this like massive butterfly in your stomach feeling when you spot a combination. You're not sure if it's working, and you're worried that you're going to like figure out that it's not working. But this is one of the cases where it worked to perfection. So it's white to play and win. Like, this is a forced line, and it results in resignation. And it's pretty. It's pretty. But give me the whole line. Like, now the first two moves are fairly obvious, I would say. There is a tempting sequence there that doesn't work. So that's the thing. Okay, well, a lot of you are saying bishop takes b4 and knight f6. Okay, gf6, then what? Then what? Queen g3, king h8. Okay, what's the big deal? Queen h4 is wrong because of f5 in that position, and white has only a perpetual check. Unfortunately, that one I saw pretty quickly. Okay, so first move is bishop takes b4. First, you must remove the imminent threat to the life of the other bishop. This also removes the defender, and indeed, knight f6 is correct. But in this position, you need to find the follow-up. Yes, we played bishop takes h7, sacking the second piece. This is like a version of the double bishop sack. Black has to take. If he doesn't take, you're going to drive the queen behind the bishop and set up like a million mate threats. But it goes on. He takes it. Now, just like in the classic double bishop sacrifice, there is a procedure that you should be familiar with that helps you like structure your play here. If you know like the game Lasker Bauer, you know that typically you want to drive the king to the very side of the board, the edge of the board, so that it doesn't have a chance to run the other direction. For instance, if you were to consider this game, this is the textbook double bishop sack, like Lasker sacks both bishops here. But a lot of people think he played rook f3. This is a mistake because black vacates this escape route. The point is you have to give this check first, king f6, queen g5 mate, and then you lift the rook up. So it's exactly the same concept here, like 1-to-1. Yeah, and so here you give a check on h3. Now rook f3 would be terrible because black would move the rook, so you give another check, and then the rook is brought up. But wait, there's more. This is the thing. I actually saw 3 more moves because black is not mated. Black, amazingly, has a way to defend against mate. Does anybody see it? And it's a crazy idea, and it may sound like it's desperate, but black actually would be better, or at the very least equal, because of how much material he'd have for the queen. Queen takes c2, yes. Look at this geometry, and the queen goes back to h7, and guess what? You've sacrificed 2 pieces already. Now black gets another rook. Black's got 2 bishops and a rook for the queen. White has perpetual check, yeah. But you don't have time to bring the other rook in. Like, black is going to go bishop b7, and black's going to be attacking. So I had to see the next move, which was the magic, the secret sauce. And the cool thing is, again, if you're familiar with the Lasker-Bauer game, how does that combination end? How does the Lasker-Bauer combination end? It ends not with checkmate, but with, let's go back to that game for a second. Bauer does exactly the same thing, and Lasker only wins smoothly because of queen d7 forking the bishops at the end of the line. It's not totally the same thing, but it's very similar. You play f takes e5. And it's not a fork against the two bishops. You're attacking a bishop, and you're also attacking, remember that rook that was undefended? Now it's time to pick it up. This is the second threat. It's a double attack on these two targets. And in the game, my opponent played bishop b7, and one final flourish, e takes f6, he resigned. Because rook g8, queen h5 is mate, and he loses everything. And that's how the game ended. And it just like works. You rarely get a chance to have a combination which works so cleanly. It's just luck. Interestingly, in this position, there was an alternate win, f5, pointed out by the computer. Queen takes f5, rook h3, and then you can play queen takes b4. And you're also winning everything because queen takes h3, queen takes f8. And here, you can't take the queen because of the discovery, but you can first take the pawn on f7. But because this is in a Title Tuesday game, I didn't see this. Just kidding. What if he doesn't play rook g8? Well, then he's dead lost. Like, I'm threatening mate. His only move is king h6, and this is completely lost. Like, he's down a ton of material, and his king is wide open. And so that's the combination. So after bishop e7, he's lost by force. If he had taken on d3, it's like advantage for white, but black can still try to like hold on. Yeah, I mean, it was a very pleasant moment. The problem is my opponent was not like super high rated, and the game wasn't important in the grand scheme of things. That was round 6. Then in round 7, I had a really interesting game against Kostolansky, with also some very beautiful lines. How into this are people? Like, if I can show the critical moments from round 7, and then I think if we do that together, it'll be enough for a YouTube video. I don't want to shortchange people, but... Okay, so this game actually did make the database, and this was the first game played in the classical time control. This is the first classical game I've played in 2 years, so it was a weird feeling. At 7 p.m., we played, all the sections merged, and the time control changed to full classical. By that, I mean it is 100 minutes for 40 moves, and then on move 40, you get another 30 minutes. And there's a 30-second increment now, as there is in FIDE tournaments. So this is like hardcore, you know, like big boy classical chess, not even 90 plus 30. At this point in the tournament, I had 6 points, 5 points out of 6. I lost one game in round 3, and obviously was tired. And my opponent is the Slovakian young IM, who's a student at Texas Tech, I think, which is a strong chess team. Really strong up-and-coming player. He just defeated Andrew Hong with black in this tournament, so obviously kind of like an underrated IM, not a great pairing for like an end-of-the-day game. And given that it was my first classical game, I was kind of worried that I would just shit the bed, for lack of a better term, and like forget how the pieces move, but that didn't happen. So let's get started. I checked briefly what he played and found that he played the Taimanov Sicilian, wasn't really in the mood for anything too theoretical, so I decided to like play d4 and decide on the spot what to play. He plays knight f6. He's a Nimzo-Indian player. I figured he'd take a look at the Jabava very quickly, probably booked up. So I played an opening that I hadn't played for a while, the Kali system, knight f3 and e3, the inferior brother of the London system. Now, this opening is very misunderstood, I think. When people see e3, I think they kind of groan and they think, like, you managed to find something even more boring than the London and even more innocuous. But it's far from innocuous. This is actually a very poisonous system. It's been around for a while. It's also called the Zukertort, I think. And I've played it very successfully when I have played it with white. I beat Jeffrey Zhang with it in the 2021 US Championship. I beat Brandon in the World Rapid and Blitz with a similar system. So I never even formally studied the theory, but it's easy to play. and it's fairly non-theoretical. So my opponent responds with e6, the sort of main line, b3. This is, of course, the typical setup. Yeah, the Zukertort is knight f3 and then b3, but very often these transpose because, like, typically white will go e3 and d4 and play the same moves in the different order. Okay, so it's all related. b3, c5, bishop b2, knight c6. So we blitz out the main moves, knight b2, d2. This is a very well-known position. And here the most popular move is bishop d6, followed by bishop e7, followed by c takes d4. These are three of the main moves. He plays c takes d4, e takes d4, and here he really surprised me. Almost everybody here plays bishop d6. This is like super standard. White typically plays bishop to d3. Short castles, like this is well-known theory for many years now. First game was played in 1900 in this position. The second game to reach this position was Capablanca versus Corzo in 1901. Speaking of Capablanca. Yeah, Capablanca versus Corzo, who was the Cuban champion at the time. So this is the main line, b6. And now, yeah, b6 was first played in 1992. Wow. In 1893, Tarrasch versus Chigorin reached this position. Incredible. And Chigorin played a move that modern players wouldn't play, bishop d7. It's a crappy move. That just looks wrong. Although Hikaru played it, so... And beat Firouzja in SCC Blitz, so maybe I shouldn't shit on it too much. Tarrasch Chigorin went c4. Chigorin played rook c8, rook c1. This is 1893, bishop f4, rook e1, knight e7, g3, bishop b8, knight e5. Okay, Tarrasch just destroyed him. Interesting story about Tarrasch. Tarrasch, who I assume most people have heard the name at least, who lends his name to a lot of opening variations, was like the modern day opening Andy of his generation, which at the time was pretty unusual. So Capablanca told us a very funny story that, like, at tournaments, Tarrasch was the only guy who was actually preparing for games, very seriously deciding what to play, whereas the other players were, like, out, you know, doing what people did in the 1890s, like, I don't know, sipping cognac and puffing on cigars and, like, getting syphilis. And I mean, whatever they did, Tarrasch was taking things very seriously. I can actually tell the story as Capablanca because I can find it. This is Capablanca writing about Tarrasch in around 1911. Direct quote from Capablanca. From an article that Capablanca wrote. Yeah, 1912. The picture of Tarrasch during tournament play is hard to forget. He has all the appearance of a diminutive Spartan. I have seen him in important games staring fixedly at the chessboard for fully an hour, so intently that one would think his sight was piercing the table. Not even the smallest muscle twitching, straight back with an almost painful seriousness, a living statue. What a fun guy. In the same article, the Cuban pointed out the meticulous way in which Tarrasch prepared his openings. In San Sebastian in 1911, he made his first 16 moves against me in 3 minutes. And, Capablanca adds, quote, I recall at San Sebastian, when after going through all the preliminaries of assuming a military bearing and curling his mustache, he invited me for a walk. He then discussed with me at great length the best opening for the game he was to play Vidmar on the following day. And then Capablanca said, Dr. Tarrasch is also a great admirer of music and the beautiful... Okay, again, 1912. All right, end quote. So, and of himself, clearly. This was Tarrasch Chigorin, and clearly Tarrasch chose the opening well. Moving on. My opponent did not enter this rabbit hole with bishop d6. He plays this move g6 after thinking for like 15 minutes. This move surprised me. I'd never really seen people fianchetto like this in this opening, but it has been played by some good players. Hikaru played it against Firouzja. Bluebaum played it, and the biggest sort of names to play this position were Kramnik Nakamura in classical chess in 2017. And I played like Kramnik here. Kramnik was 2811 was his rating. So this is the only serious classical game to feature this move, ironically. Yeah, the irony never stops in chess. Okay, so what was my thought process here? So the default is to go bishop d3. But I thought this would kind of cooperate with my opponent. And I kind of considered this position. I thought he's going to fianchetto both bishops. This looks like a really reasonable setup for black. And I knew that g6 was not a common move, so I kind of wanted to punish it in some way. And I came up with a really cool idea, creative idea. Also very risky, because if it didn't work, like, it would come crashing down. But I thought it was a nice way to, like, annoy the crap out of him. So first I go bishop to b5. Now, not a standard square for this bishop, because, like, the only thing that you can do on this square is give it up for the knight, which is not typically recommended. But that's exactly what I did. Bishop g7. Kramnik castled in his game with Hikaru. Hikaru also castled, and Kramnik decided to play this more positionally. Rook e1. Queen b6. The game ended up in a draw. Fighting draw. I played bishop takes c6 check. And this doesn't make any sense unless you understand the sort of follow-up idea. And the follow-up idea turns out to be a mistake tactically. But I think from a practical standpoint, it was a pretty decent idea. Who can decipher, like, a specific concept here? Yeah, bishop a3 is the... So I don't play bishop a3 immediately, but the point here, I started with knight e5, attacking the pawn. He defends it with queen c7. Turns out to be a mistake. And now bishop a3. And this was the whole concept. And you're stopping him from castling. And it's very hard to get this bishop off the diagonal, because if you attack it, I'll plant it on c5. Otherwise, I'm going to castle and start opening up the board. And bishop f8 is super weakening, and he still can't castle. So I thought about this. It looked really weird and unnatural, but I decided, whatever. What's the harm? Let's just do it. And it worked very well. Unfortunately, black has a tactical solution here that completely escaped both of us. And that is the move knight e4. Totally, yeah, he played knight d7. This, of course, I saw. This, we both missed, I think, because knight takes e4, queen a5, check. And black picks up the bishop, simultaneously protecting this square. And white can't go knight c5 because you drop a knight. Fortunately, white has a way to equalize with queen f4. Hitting f7, black castles, and there's a forced line here, like knight f6 check, king h8. But it's pretty dicey for white. Like, if black wants a draw, he can play bishop f6 and queen b4 check. Computer gives some weird line here. King f1, queen takes d4, rook e1, check, all essentially forced. Yeah, rook e1, bishop a6, king g1, queen d2. And if black wants a draw, he can play queen c3, and the rook is going to be chased perpetually like this. So this would have, like, forced me to scramble just to, like, hold the game. And that's the danger of these tactical ideas. Like, if you miss something, it can be really, really bad. But fortunately, he played knight d7, which is, I think, the human move. Knight takes d7. Now there was a really nice detail. If he took on d4, this I had to see. And this I was pretty proud to have seen during the game. You can't go knight c5 because he forks the rook, and actually he'll pick up the full rook for no minor piece. White has a winning move, well, essentially a winning move here that I had to notice. Let's see if anybody can find it. It's a nice little tactical shot. So ironically, it's now white who plays knight e4. It's white who has this square at his disposal. And even though everything is hanging, you're already up a piece. And the main thing to understand is bishop takes a1, queen takes a1, the rook is hanging in the corner, and there's like a million checks threatened. So he thought here for like 5-6 minutes, and I think also saw this move and took on d7. And after bishop c5, my strategy has been fully successful. The bishop is now secure. There's no tactical potential because he has no knight. And I have a clear plan of castling and opening up the queen side with like c4. And he still can't get this bishop off easily. So at this point, I could sense that he was like really disappointed. He thought for a long time on the next few moves. And he ended up playing f6 and king f7. Reasonable idea. He's trying to like eventually castle by hand. But it's slow, it's clunky, and it's weakening. with no time to waste, I played c4. Like, I have to get things moving on the queen side. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Like, white is clearly better. And I continued to outplay him in the next few moves. He tried to play a5. That ended up playing right into my hands because it gave me a passed pawn. And it gave me a lot of space on the queen side to start operating on. Here I'm using some pins, threatening bishop. Here I'm threatening bishop b6, and then I'm threatening bishop d6. And so I'm going to get us to the critical moment where things actually get fun. So I played rook b1. This is bad because of queen takes a4 and the rooks infiltrate the 7th rank. So he moves his queen back. And here, things take a very unexpected turn. So I played queen b3. And his next move completely eluded me. I totally missed it. He played this move, bishop h6. Really annoying move because he cannot play dc due to knight takes c4 with just like a devastating array of threats. But by playing bishop h6, he's targeting the weak spot in my position. And if I sort of just move the knight back, now he can take on c4, block with the bishop, and free up his pieces. And white's not even better here. It's like black is solid. So I have all this pressure going on him, and it's kind of like amounting to nothing if the knight has to just move. So I thought about bishop b4 and discovered that here he has another resource. He can play rook b8, creating another pin. Also not good. f4 doesn't do anything. But then I spotted a really interesting idea. And I was skeptical at first, and I ended up playing it. And I was very happy that I did. cd, sacrificing the knight. I say sacrificing because, no, you don't win the bishop back. He has bishop e6. And from a distance, you might have thought that d5 is good, but now the other bishop will fall, and this is a dead end. The actual idea that I came up with, I was really proud of it immediately after the game, and of course the computer frickin' shoots it down. But still, I think it's a nice practical idea. What did I play in this position? Yeah, so we start with this move, queen b7. He cannot take the queen because simply I'm going to remove the defender and win the game. This is easy to calculate. So he has to move the king back. It's in this position that I had to spot the next move, which is queen to e7. And the point is simple. I want to go rook b7 and checkmate him. And because f6 and e6 are both weak, he can't really easily get my queen out of his territory. Queen e8, of course, is natural, but then I thought I would take on f6, reinforcing the threat. Now, it turns out, when you turn on the computer, everything always looks very simple. This position I misevaluated, and black turns out to be, well, better and at the very least, like in the driver's seat. With somehow a move that totally... I saw this move in my head, but didn't appreciate its strength. Let's see if people can come up with a defensive resource for black. Typical computer chess. It's not pretty. It's just very functional idea. So rook takes a4 is what he played. Sorry, he played rook takes a4 here. But it's going to be similar. No, not rook a7, then I just take the rook and win. No, rook takes a4 is wrong. That's kind of what he did. Yeah, nobody has said it yet. Bishop c3 doesn't address the threat. Bishop c8 is also wrong. Queen f7 is correct. Now, why does this move not come to mind? Because you're just giving up a third pawn now for the piece. But now black has this follow-up move, bishop f4, and suddenly the queen has no real estate in the center or on black's side of the board. Because queen e4 runs into bishop d5, and black just slices you up with his bishops. So you have to go all the way back to e2. But unfortunately, after bishop d5, white's initiative has evaporated. The bishops are occupying commanding posts, and if you try something like rook b7, it no longer carries any weight. Now, this is a threat. This is a threat. White falls apart completely. So in this position, the prudent thing to do is go queen h4. I probably wouldn't have played that. But only black can be better in this position. Bishop f5 hangs this bishop, so you have to go to d5. But he didn't see it. So in this position, he was already in time pressure. This is only move 26. I think he had something maybe 15, 20 minutes for 14 more moves. And he played the move that I expected him to play, which is rook takes a4. And the reason I expected him to play it is because after the trade of rooks, he's preventing me from going rook b7 due to the back rank mate. And here I found a really nice move. This is the game-winning move. There is a very tempting move, which is wrong. And then there's the correct move. White to play and win. No, bishop a3 is too slow. Bishop a3 actually is decent, but... Okay, so c7 was the tempting move. Unfortunately here, black has this very weird-looking move, bishop a5, covering the d8 square by x-ray. And white runs out of resources. Still can't move the rook, that's the problem. So what you have to do here is almost like put on your beginner hat and think of the position in a very simple way. Like, what does white want to do? I want to go rook b7. Why can't I do it? Well, because of back rank mate. What do you do in such... What are you taught to do in these situations? Make Luft. h4. Win. The thing is, like, you're not really hurrying here because of how active my pieces are. He can't do anything immediately. So I played h4. The best move was h3, but they're both winning in a very similar way. And that's it, basically. Now, he finds one trick. He plays bishop d5. Very tricky move. Rook b7, of course, loses the game to a really beautiful sequence. Check and rook h1. Of course, this I did see. And queen h3, because it's a classic idea. I think, can he go queen h3 here? Magnus style? Wow, I think he can. Dude, that's crazy. You can go either rook h1 or queen h3. That's super rare that you can do either order. That's pretty wild. But this is a beautiful move. Also, you can go bishop f4 and give checkmate in 2 moves. That's a third way to win. Yeah, you have mate in 2, but this is the beautiful win. So there's 3 different mates, and that's why rook b7 is a bad move. But I have a second idea, which is to play c7. So you're basically combining all of the threats in one. Now rook b8 is threatened, and bishop a5, the old idea was effective because of the back rank mate. Now it's not mate, and now the queen is pinned, so you don't have queen h3. So after c7, he is just completely overwhelmed. He has to go back to a8 and just simply d takes e5. Again, white is not in a hurry, so you're just exposing all of his pieces and making more weaknesses in his territory. If he takes, I would have taken back and played rook b8. He plays bishop f4, bishop d6, just screwing in the final nail in the coffin. This is again a threat. Queen b7, super inventive defense by my opponent. Takes b7. Again, there's back rank mate because he's covering the escape square. But that allows my queen to slide into d8. Take f6, back to d8. And the final flourish, white to play and find the fastest mate. Really nice cherry on top. I think an easy move once you see the position. It's just like your hand should play it. Your hand should play this move. Yeah, e6 check. Total destruction. If he takes with the bishop, I have at the very least this. If he takes with the king, figure it out yourself. There's 800 mates here. He played king g7 and resigned after bishop f8 because it's mate in 3 moves. Boom, boom, and you promote with checkmate. And I thought it was cool how all the pieces are like operating in symphony. Like the pawn is defending the queen. Pawn is defending the bishop, which is helping out the queen. The rook is holding the fort down. The pawn is making a luft. So he's just like overwhelmed step by step, even though he's up a piece. And he allowed this process to happen when he played rook takes a4. He had to get this cancer out of the position immediately at any cost. But of course, we both didn't see it because it involves just like giving up all the center pawns. So I think the practical value of the sack was pretty high. I'm still proud of this idea, even though it is technically unsound. And in the official like article on the US Chess Federation, I feel like when you just look with a computer, it can be very hard to appreciate like the practical value of something when you see that just queen e8, queen f7. I'll just get the white queen out of there. What could be more natural? What could be less natural than doing this? I mean, come on. Why would you let the queen just remain on the square? But of course, like rook a4 actually is the most natural move. And so that's how I won my first classical game in like 6 decades. Wasn't without mistakes. There were quite a few of them, starting from this early oversight. And the rust was really speaking these games. Like I was missing a lot of pretty basic tactical ideas, but still, I was happy with the quality of the game, and that's where we'll conclude the recap. So thanks for watching. I'm going to get going. I'll put this on YouTube. I think this was a pretty decent recap of 2 of the highlight games from the tournament. I'll probably do another one for the last round game and the penultimate game, which are also very interesting. I always feel like this type of content is boring, like I'm just talking about my games, but I feel like people who've never seen the games, it would potentially be interesting. I've seen them a million times, so it's hard to like put myself in the shoes of someone who's just listening to me talking about them. But I'm glad the feedback is positive. Thank you. I'll keep it in mind. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Enjoy Gari. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll be streaming sometime in the future.